Welcome into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Safey alongside Chris Ballas here on Monday, February 17th. We are live. Anthony Broom not with us out this week. He will be back in town for Michigan State on Friday night. Very much looking forward to that. We'll preview it later on in the week. But before that, we got to talk about Michigan's win over Ohio State. We got your questions to get to, so get those in the YouTube chat. Let's start out the show by, just giving this statement. I've been giving facts at the top of the show the last few weeks, and this fact that Michigan beat Ohio State by 3 points in Columbus is true in both football and basketball. If you like that fact, make sure to like this video. Let's get to 300 likes here on YouTube. Pump those numbers up. Subscribe to the channel. Head to thewolverine.com. Use the promo code UM1 right now for 2 months of premium access for just $1. Chris just posted a story. He talked to Dusty May today exclusively on, things going on with Dusty May and a bunch of other premium content over at thewolverine.com. You can use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of premium access. Chris, what a sports weekend. USA, Canada, Michigan baseball, Michigan hockey gets shootout win, overtime win over Minnesota. Baseball's 4-0. Big win over number 2 Virginia to start off the season earlier on in the weekend, and capped off on Sunday by Michigan beating Ohio State in men's basketball 86-83.
2 wins over Minnesota in hockey, both overtime. So didn't really affect the pairwise rankings. They still have some work to do to get the bid. But I got to tell you, man, it was fun. And anytime Michigan beats Ohio State in anything, it's a blast. So we had a great time watching that and covering that. So in my opinion, this Michigan basketball team, what they've accomplished has basically guaranteed Dusty May National Coach of the Year. At least that needs how it needs to be, because this guy, from 8-24 to now, and I don't care how they finish, unless of course they finish 0-6, but we know that's not going to happen. So a lot of basketball still to be played though, Clay, and I still think that 16-4 could win this conference, maybe even 15-5, with everything that everybody has still to play, with all the teams that the contenders still have to play. So it's going to be fascinating. But man, Dusty May and what he's accomplished here is just unbelievable.
David Ross in the live chat says it's always a good day when Michigan beats Ohio State. Absolutely. That is 100% true. Get your questions, comments in here in the YouTube live chat as we go forward. And I agree with you. It's something I've talked about for a few weeks on here, is the backloaded schedule. And look at Purdue, for example, right? They lose 2 incredibly difficult games last week, where you're going to Michigan in a game where Michigan lost big to you. They want revenge, tough environment. Then you come home and play Wisconsin, one of the hottest teams in the Big Ten and the country. You lose 2. Next thing you know, you got 4 losses, right? They can pile up in a hurry. Not even pile up, but just 1 or 2 could be the difference here with where you stand in the Big Ten. So a long way to go. That's why you got a couple days off here. Michigan taking the day off today, day off tomorrow, because they won't get one next week. You start Friday against Michigan State. It's 5 games in 13 days. It's a full sprint to the finish line, essentially. And, it's this Big Ten race is really going to heat up. But let's talk about this game a little bit. Should we start with this, the kind of one of the main motivations for Michigan going into this, besides just winning the game, was to win this one for Roddy Gale Jr., who was getting Roddy chants in the locker room afterwards, as seen from some social media videos. And, he transfers from Ohio State. He comes back to Columbus. He was getting booed every time he touched the ball. Apparently was getting yelled crazy things at him as soon as he entered the gym for warmups. He said earlier in the week that he received death threats and all sorts of vitriol from Ohio State fans after transferring to Michigan. He said he didn't, it's fans being fans, but that's a unique situation. They rallied around him, got the win, and he was a big part of it despite missing some shots early on. He gets, Dusty May dials him up for a dunk to put them up 2, and then that put them up 4, and then the drive later on with less than 2 minutes ago puts them up 2 after it was tied. He gets downhill, another Dusty May draw up out of a timeout. I thought those were huge, and Roddy Gale didn't play perfect, but he played, 30 minutes and helped the team win, and they rallied around him.
It's not fans being fans. It's Ohio State fans being Ohio State fans.
Right.
These
Right.
people are nuts. These people have got to get a life here. Threatening a kid's life and everything else is ridiculous. It's still a sport. I know they've been trained to hate Michigan like other rivals have. It's still just a damn game, right? And that's something that people don't down there don't seem to realize. But I was so happy for that kid, and really the plays that Dusty May called out of the timeout were ridiculous. Unbelievable how good this guy is. And to me, he's probably the brightest young coach in college basketball, right? And the fact that he's at Michigan is I'm extremely grateful for that. After the last couple of years, we didn't get to cover a tournament team. Every year that goes by that you don't get to cover a tournament team, right, is a wasted opportunity. Life is short, man. I was thinking about that. If you live to be 80 years old, Michigan went through a 10-year period where they didn't make the NCAA tournament in our lifetimes. That's an eighth of your life if you're lucky. It's ridiculous, and that should never happen at a place like Michigan. So, but see the high level basketball that we saw under John Beeline, under Juwan Howard for a year anyway, and now Dusty May. It's everybody talks about Michigan being a football school, but you can go back to every decade: 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Uh, well, not really the 90s as much, except for the Fab Five obviously early in the decade. This program is on par with some of the top basketball schools in the country. So I think they're 1-7 in national championship games. Just think if they had won a couple more of those, where they would be.
Yes.
So
Yep.
regardless, Michigan basketball is here. The fans are selling out every game. Dusty May said it early in the year. He said we give him a month, and then we're going to fill this place, and he was absolutely right. This guy is pushing all the right buttons. This guy is a class act. I am again grateful to be able to cover his teams.
Mm-hmm. And Roddy Gale, you mentioned pushing the right buttons, right? It was just 3 games ago where he was a starter, or
Yep.
4, and then 3 games ago he comes off the bench. Reuben Jones starts. I think that has gone really well. Reuben Jones gave him a lot in this game. Besides actually the defense, not being as much of a Reuben Jones-esque type of game, although he did have the steal and dunk on the other end, but hits a late shot clock, jump shot, hit a 3. He's, despite the number, confident shooting those threes, and they need him to take those. He pushed that button. He pushed the button in the first half of, okay, we need a little something here. Trey Donaldson's in foul trouble. Danny Wolf's in foul trouble. Let's bring in LJ Kaysen, who played, I think, 3 minutes or 4 minutes. And
Yep.
it was like the LJ Kaysen show, good and bad, for
Yeah.
4 minutes, because he hits a couple shots. He has a reverse layup, hits a 3, also gives up some points on the other end. But you look at those coaching decisions, and then down the stretch late, how they've been able to execute in a lot of these close games have been really nice. And if he does win Coach of the Year, CB, one of the reasons why is because he's the one that plucked Danny Wolf out of the transfer portal from
Unreal.
Yale, a guy who was seen as pretty good, promising, unique, right? But he was a center at Yale. Now he's, basically, operates like he's a 6'6" wing in a 7-footer's body. He was incredible, essentially running the show for Michigan for however many minutes he was in there. He got in the early foul trouble. But first 10 minutes of the game, Danny Wolf has 4 assists. They were just collapsing on him. He found all the other guys. Second half, he scores 15 of his 17 points. He was the guy, like I said, down the stretch. And I saw this from Eric Shapiro, who's a good follow on Twitter, breaking down in a thread. They scored 10 times off that 4 or 5 ball screen with Vlad Golden. You had the one to Will Cheddar, who kicked it out to a Namari Burnett 3, which was huge. I mean, this kid, he's limiting turnovers. Last 6 games, 1.8 per game. Before that, it was around 4. He's starting to pick his spots better, play a little more under control. And, as Dusty May said today, everyone talks about Danny in the 4 or 5 ball screen, but you need the 5 part of that to be really good. And Vlad Golden is just that, a quiet 20 and 10 for Vlad, and did some huge things on the offensive glass with 6 offensive rebounds.
Yeah, I love that combination. What I really love is is the unselfishness, right? You see the picture here that's up for people listening. It's the team, arm in arm here, and Dusty May preaches that the way that Beeline used to preach it. I'll never forget, after one of the wins against Michigan State early in his career, he goes, "That's why we do this. That's why we love each other. That's why we always play for each other, for our teammates." And listening to them chant Roddy Gale's name in the locker room in the place down the stretch gives you goosebumps, man. That's the way it's supposed to be. And how can you be anything but happy for the kid, unless you, of course, you're a Ohio State fan? But to me, putting Reuben Jones into the starting lineup, right? He had an idea that something needed to change, but you still need Roddy Gale to be completely on board with it and to be okay, anything for the team, because you're going to need him in a game like that, and that's exactly what happened. But Reuben Jones, that team looks better when he's in the lineup and when he's playing with confidence. And it's funny because before the Purdue game, we put up his highlights from last year at North Texas, and we said this is who Reuben Jones really is, and if they can get this from him, and everybody's like, well, it's a different level of competition. He just wasn't playing with the same swag and the same confidence. And once he started doing that, you saw what a difference it made for this team. So, but Danny Wolf, what he's doing now, and it takes a little bit of luck too, right? Danny Wolf grew up, I think his grandfather or somebody went to Michigan, if I'm
His
not mistaken.
mom, his sister,
There you
a
go.
lot of
So,
family members.
okay, so there you go. So, okay, you have an in there, and then all of a sudden, but the one thing that Dusty May did, and he said, "Hey, okay, I'm telling him he can play the four, and every other coach is saying he's BSing you. You can't do that. And who's the genius now, right? You've got this, what's working, the 4-5 ball screen, and what Danny Wolf is doing with the ball in his hands. Not very many people can do. He's going to be probably doing it in the NBA next year, if we're being honest. I think he's a first round pick, and if that's the case, then I think he's got to go. He's getting pretty close to lottery. I'll tell you what, to lottery territory with the things that he can do.
Hmm.
So, but it's been fantastic watching him, and how much fun it has been to see him develop, and how much fun it's been, Clay, to see everybody on this team improve. I can't think of one guy who's taken a step backward here. These guys are getting better, and it's been really fun to watch.
Yeah, it feels like they're just figuring more things out on the fly. Like they kind of hit a wall there, starting maybe Minnesota. Then obviously you had the Purdue debacle, and you're kind of winning close, right? The Penn State game and things like that.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, they're taking away the 4-5 ball screen. What's our identity on offense? That was kind
Yep.
of one of the things we talked about on here. And they've kind of found different ways to get into it. As Dusty said today, camouflage it, do things off of that action. And, it feels like it's opponent based because as Dusty says, not, Ohio State can do some things that Purdue couldn't do, but Michigan State will be able to do some things that they can't do. It's going to change by game, but it feels like you are developing some more answers. I feel like Danny Wolf is just playing a lot more under control.
Yeah.
And it's been huge for this team. And then again, it's like if you have a guy that's finishing the way Vlad does around the rim, and he didn't even make all of his bunnies yesterday, but
No.
I honestly, God, he gets 14 shots up. I think 13 of them were inside the arc, and then the 1-3. Yes, it was
Yeah.
14. That's a lot. Like that's a good
Yeah.
amount. I would have fed him more. I would have fed him like it was the UCLA game. He felt like he was kind of on in
He
that
did.
way. But when you have Danny kind of cooking the way that he was, it leads to a really nice game offensively. You score 1.23 points per possession. That's Michigan's fourth highest mark against a high major this year, best mark since the Washington game on January 12th. And I
Yeah.
think it was after that game, Dusty was asked, have you guys hit your peak offensively? And he said, not even close. And
Yeah.
the first thing he referenced in terms of what they could do better and when maybe they'll be running at more of an optimum rate would be offensive rebounding. Well, in this game, they grabbed 19 of them, 21 second chance points. They rebounded 50% of their own missed shots. And I think the size advantage and just being the hammer, not the nail, as they say, as John Beeline often used to say as well, was kind of the difference. Beating them up on the glass, you win the rebounding
Yep.
margin by 15 points.
They're starting to match the physicality, right? And I called this team. I said they were showing too many white collar tendencies, right, in the earlier in the year, and characteristics, and they were. They were not battling for rebounds, and Dusty May said the same thing, and Vlad Golden said the same thing, right? We got to get used to playing physical basketball, and even after the UCLA and USC wins, he said it's going to get harder because that is not indicative of what the Big Ten really is, and we're starting to see that. And these guys are getting down and dirty now. You're not going to be you're going to need it more than ever on Friday night, right? Because Michigan State's going to come in here with the their football mentality, and try to bully them and try to get the calls. Tom Izzo's going to be going crazy, ranting and raving, and trying to basically swing that game in his favor by getting a friendlier whistle than he might on the road. So, but to me, it's this is a huge game on Friday night because, right, depending on what happens in tomorrow night's game with Purdue, Michigan State, Purdue, this is the one where if you get this one, it's going to be really, really hard, Clay, for them to not get a share of the Big Ten title, in my opinion. So, but we're
Yes.
going to find out exactly what this team is made of physically when Michigan State comes in here. But I am really encouraged by what we've seen the last couple of weeks in that respect, in terms of, okay, like Dusty May said, we weren't hitting threes, but we're finding other ways to win by getting loose balls and getting the offensive rebounds and toughing things out. So it's kind of scary to think, right? What happens when they start making more of those threes? We've seen it. We know they can do it, and I think you're still going to see another notch up offensively where this team can be.
I agree. In one of the, I think what we've learned about Dusty May since he's taken the job is, and a lot of coaches say this and believe this, but winning the shot battle is really important to him. And I think it was frustrating for him a lot of the season, even when they were winning, that they weren't winning the shot battle, because he
Yeah,
knew, hey, if things don't go our way or you miss some shots at the rim like you did at Minnesota, that you still want to be able to win the game. They shoot 7 more field goal attempts and got to the line more than Ohio State in this game. I think that was big. And like you said, they're not shooting particularly well. I think this was their best, or tied for their best 3-point shooting game at 33.3% in quite a while. Rutgers game, you were at 35, you hit 7. You haven't hit double digit threes since the Penn State game, and a few of those came, late when you really needed them. So they're still not shooting as well. They are kind of bludgeoning some teams on the inside, which I think is really good. We got a super chat here from the Wolverine Scoop that says, "Why does Jack Sawyer only wear shorts because he doesn't have a pair of gold pants?" It's a fair point. And
that is a fair point, and I love that. I love what did Donovan Edwards say? They don't have their pants or something like that. They
yeah,
got
they ain't got
zero
no
gold
gold
pants.
pants.
They ain't got no gold
And he was
pants.
letting guys know down at the Senior Bowl about that, the Ohio State guys.
Yeah, and I love that. So I wanted to get to something that Adam Shepardson asked. He said, "I hope Danny stays. I honestly think he needs one more season." That's what fans like to say, right? And we said that about Franz, and we've said that about different guys. And I don't see it, Shep. I don't. I just think that if you are a first round pick, you got to take that guaranteed money. And he's going to be he's already what 21, 22 years old or something like that. So he's you got to strike while the iron's hot. So it'd be selfishly, I'd love to see him back in a Michigan uniform. I don't think there's any chance that happens.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if he leaves, it means good things for your team, and it's meaning really good things for your team right now. I mean, I
Yep.
think he's the team's MVP. Um, he just makes them such a tough cover on a night to night basis. I keep saying this every week too. Just wait until they get in the tournament. If they win a first game, and you have 48 hours to prepare for Michigan, and you say, okay, what are we gonna do? We got these 2 7-footers. One of them is basically their point guard half the game.
Yeah.
How do we defend this?
Yep.
So it's look. I mean, the fact that he's climbing into some of these mock draft projections as a first rounder is a pretty positive thing for Michigan, and they're reaping the benefits of it right now with some of these wins. He's helping them down the stretch. I mean, he makes huge plays in the clutch moments. Like we said, he's improving with some of the stuff, turnovers, everything else. Um, the close game, another close game. I thought the reason why this one was close wasn't because they weren't playing well offensively. It was some of the defense stuff. And you mentioned it, right? Michigan State's next. What did you not do well in this game against Ohio State? Well, you didn't defensive rebound particularly well till the end. They seem to
Yep.
do it at the end when they really need them, which is huge. You got to get rebounds at the ends of games. That can be the difference between going home, your season's over, and not. Um, Transition defense was an issue against a team that doesn't really run all that much in Ohio State. They had 12 fast break points. You're going to have to rebound against Michigan State. You're going to have to play in transition against Michigan State. And
Yeah.
I see you. I was going to ask the same exact question this morning to Dusty May about transition defense. And I think we're on a similar wavelength of like, just make sure, I know it's on the scout, but just to
Yeah.
make sure he understands how important that is.
Yeah, get back and limit those because after made buckets, how many times does Michigan State get 4, 6 points a game? Which is often the difference in a Big Ten game
Yep.
by breaking out and getting a good look by beating everybody else down the floor after a miss or a make. So, yeah, I have zero doubt that Dusty May knows how to coach his team and what to watch for, right? But there are times that you plant these little seeds. Hey, are you going to make sure your guys get back on defense against these guys? Because we've seen it too many times here where Michigan State has run them out of the gym with their transition offense, and this team is not a good shooting team. So it is to Michigan's benefit, obviously, to try to get them some long, some shots from deep. I see Mr. Dave with his turnovers question. I want to talk about that in a second too. But to me, it's clear, right, that how Michigan's going to attack Michigan State defensively. You're going to see some zone defense, right? You're going to make them get to the middle of that zone. I didn't see most of the Illinois game. I don't think a lot of people did because they were watching the USA hockey game against Canada. But I know one way not to attack them is to, jack 33 threes, and, you're going to have a size advantage inside, and it's going to get physical. Again, it's going to get physical, but this is the pivotal game of the year, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about it, Clay, but I would imagine that arena is going to be as loud as we've heard it in years, and it was really, really loud against Purdue.
Yeah, I know Pump It Up, who's a great message board poster
Mhm.
over on the Wolverine.com, said he's been to countless games. Obviously, you have too. That it was top 5 in terms of environment for the Purdue game. I can only imagine what it's going to be like on Friday night
Yeah.
for Michigan State, and really one of the more in terms of okay, what's on the line? 2 top 15 teams, both in the chase for the Big Ten title. Again, we'll talk about it on Thursday, but it feels like this is as big as it gets in terms of like a February 21st game between 2 in-state rivals. So it's
Yep.
really, really important. Like you said, Mr. Dave asks or states, still 12 turnovers too many. I don't know about that. I
No,
thought they limited them
especially for
well.
86 points and the pace that game was being played.
Right.
I'd take that every day, as Dusty May says, and twice on Sunday. That's his thing, by the way, is every day and twice on Sunday.
He invented that. Yeah.
He invented that. But
But
it's more than okay.
in
12.
in 2 or 3 of them were underneath the
Right.
basket. On
Exactly.
I think there was one where Vlad it was like kind of a half shot. He kind of got stripped a little
Right.
bit. They counted that as a turnover. There are always a couple of those. There are much fewer of them lately out top on a. I mean, earlier in the year, it's like they're trying to initiate the offense. It's just a
No.
lazy pass to the wing, and it's
Yeah.
going the other way.
There
You
was
had the
one of
one Danny
those.
Wolf pick six. Trey Donaldson had a really bad one
Yep.
late in the game. But other than that, you talk about percentages: 17.2%. The game before that against Purdue was 16%. That was a huge difference
Yep.
in the game.
Yep.
Indiana was 18%. Before that, they had some big issues. Oregon, Rutgers over 20%. But
Right.
I don't, I remember John Beeline one year saying 11 was okay with him, and they played slower.
Right. Right. They played a
He
ton
preferred
slower.
single digits, but
Right, right. Yeah, who wouldn't? Yeah, and his teams were always among the top 10 or 15 in the country in turnovers, right? And that's not what this is. But as John Beeline used to say, when people used to be critical of him for taking so many threes, right, and his offense,
Mhm.
there's more than one way to win a basketball game, which he proved, right? And he adapted as well. And Dusty May just happens to be different. Yes, valuing the ball is important, but they want to get good looks. We want to create tempo opportunities, and he will take 12 every game. I guarantee that, as long as they aren't the pick sixes that we were just talking about. I think Vlad had one up top too, if I'm not mistaken. But
That sounds right.
yeah,
Yeah.
so but yeah, overall, that was a very well played game. I thought they could have been a little bit tighter defensively, Clay,
Mhm.
and I think that they're going to need to be in some of these games, but. Um, I like the fact, and I asked Dusty May, "Are you happy that you have 5 days off? Would you rather be playing, right away?" And he said, It's either going to, as a coach, you're going to say it's either too short, which we're going to hear from Tom Izzo if they lose to
Yes.
Michigan after
Yep.
playing Purdue, or darn it, we shouldn't have had the layoff or whatever. But he said we just play the schedule as it is, and I think this is good for Michigan in that it gives them some time to recover and prepare for Michigan State. I like the fact that it gives the Michigan team, the coaches, more time to scout this Michigan State team and expose some of their weaknesses, because there are some offensively.
And I believe Mike Boynton Jr., Michigan assistant, is on the scout. And like you and I said earlier when we were sitting there at the press conference, we just need 10 minutes with him, just go over a couple things about Michigan
Right.
State. But no, they understand. They
Yeah.
understand this. It's
Yep.
also funny too when coaches say that we can only play the schedule. Has a coach ever like just decided not. They just show up at some gym. No, we're not going to play this guy.
Right,
Right?
right.
We're
No,
gonna.
I love
Um,
Boynton, by the way. What a luxury to have that guy
oh
here.
yeah.
And Dusty May, it just goes to show you he did everything right. We talked about the roster and putting it together because even before he got, and this was my question today, even before he got his players here, he was saying, I don't concede anything. I want to compete this year. And then he goes out and goes 8 for 8 on the official visitors. And
Mm-hmm.
in the summer, they start thinking, "Hey, do we have a championship team here?" And you don't want to think that way. And I think we all predicted that they'd be better than the ninth or 10th or 11th. That a lot of people were picking them just because of the talent they had coming in, and we had seen some of it. We saw what Roddy Gale did at Ohio State. We knew what Vlad could do. That he was immediately going to be one of the better big men in the conference. So. But making the pieces fit together, as we've seen, and you talked about today, Clay, when we were talking about Illinois, right? It's not always that seamless, and it takes great coaching to do it. This is not one of Brad Underwood's best jobs at Illinois, but what Michigan has accomplished here, and Dusty May has accomplished, putting these pieces together. And I mean, 6 games to go, and you're 12-2. You could easily be 13-1. Now you could go the other way too with some of these games that
100%.
went the other way, but you are what the record says you are, and 12-2 at this junction is just remarkable.
There have been 32 Big Ten games that we'll get that comment off the screen here.
Hmm.
32 Big Ten games decided by 4 points or fewer or in overtime. Michigan's been involved in 10 of those, and
Yeah,
they're 9-1 in them. And I mean, you have to just keep mentioning this caveat that the Indiana three-quarter court shot goes at the buzzer.
right.
That's not in there. The Rutgers threes at the end when
Yep.
that was really what, a 7 or 8 point win in terms of like how the game
Yeah.
actually played out.
Yeah.
But
And Purdue could have easily been an 8-point win, right? If Braden Smith doesn't hit those crazy threes. So,
mhm.
and good for him. I mean, obviously they count. Those weren't desperation threes; those are just incredibly tough, good shots. But right, as Dusty May said, these weren't all really 3-point games. And frankly, Clay, I wouldn't care if they won 12-11 in all of these games. You take a win in the Big Ten anytime you can get it, especially on the road. And look where they've won. Right, these are tough places to win. USC, UCLA, Rutgers is a tough place to win, no matter what anybody
Mhm.
says. Indiana is a tough place to win historically. So Ohio State had been playing really good ball. So and Wisconsin is the best one, and I'm glad they got Wisconsin when they did, and everybody's going to talk about that. But you play them when they're on the schedule, and getting a win in Wisconsin, no matter where it falls on the schedule, especially now with the way Wisconsin's playing, absolutely huge.
Let's take questions, but in just a second, I pulled this up because you said okay they were picked ninth in the league, but we probably would have had them higher. I had to do this for our
Hmm.
preseason basketball magazine
Yep.
over at the Wolverine. I picked the Big Ten. It is an impossible task, so I don't really blame anybody. I mean, there's so many new pieces now, and there are
Oh boy.
18 teams.
Yep.
Here are my teams in order. One, Purdue, not a hot take. They had won it 2 straight years
Hmm.
before that, but UCLA. This is that Indiana's next. Those don't look great. Oregon, that doesn't look great. I had Michigan at 5, Rutgers at 6 because of the talent.
Mm,
I
yep.
kind of bought into that. Michigan State, Illinois, Ohio State, Iowa, Wisconsin. I mean, Wisconsin way underrated by me.
Yeah. They
Um,
always, what? No matter what we do, no matter what Wisconsin is coming back, they're almost always up there, right? It's
it's true.
unbelievable. Yeah. So, but I will say this: your football picks last year, you know what? There's a little bit of balance in the universe now because you barely missed on football until the end of the year, and then basketball. You know what? It is what it is. So, but I think you picked what 84-71 at Ohio State,
Yeah, I
something like
liked the
that.
matchup, and
Yep.
I thought they were just due for kind of an offensive outburst, and we talked about it. It was one of their
Yep.
better offensive games of the year. The
Just need
defense wasn't there,
exactly.
and Ohio
Yep.
State hit some shots that were tough.
Yeah.
But
They
no, and I've got a couple bad beats have been on there as well. If you look at the record against the spread with some of these, I mean, guys, whatever goes in or whatever they throw up at the buzzer against Michigan goes in as
800
long as the
don't
spread's
gamble,
on.
everybody. You can do everything right and still lose.
True.
So that's why I don't if I'm gambling, I don't know what the minimum bet is on FanDuel and all that or any of these apps, but it'd be a quarter for me. So I'm a cheapskate.
Yeah, these are very low stakes for me.
Yep.
But let's get to some questions. We got more basketball. We got football questions. But before we do, got to talk about our friends over at Homefield Apparel. Tons of excitement around not only Michigan football this offseason, but basketball, hockey. You could be going to Yost in a few weeks. They just had senior night, but Big Ten tournament, they're a top 4 team right now in the Big Ten. If that holds, they will host to begin the Big Ten tournament. So you're going to want to show up to Yost. You're going to want to show up to Chrysler in the best Michigan apparel, and that is from Homefield. I've got my bomber jacket. I've got a bunch of T-shirts from them as well. I know you have some gear, CB, as well. Come tournament time, you're going to want to be rocking that around town, because the Michigan Wolverines are going to be in the NCAA tournament this year for the first time in a few seasons. You got the 2024 Michigan Football Platinum Box, hats, hoodies, socks, T-shirts, coffee mug, crew necks, T-shirts, sweatpants, all and more over at homefieldapparel.com. You can use the promo code Wolverine for 15% off your first order. That is promo code Wolverine for 15% off your first order. Remind people to get some more questions in here on the live chat if they want to, but we got some from our premium subscribers over at the Wolverine.com message board. The Fort, you can become a member. Use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of premium access for just $1. There it is. Let's start with Hair Barb, who says, what will be a tougher road game, Oklahoma or Nebraska?
It's a great question.
I know.
Right? I think Nebraska is going to be better. And that is one of the tougher venues in terms of fan support that I have seen in the Big Ten, witnessed personally. Clay, you were there at that night game. That was you were on the. Were you on the field deck at that point?
No,
box.
Stands? Press box.
Okay, yeah, but you could you couldn't hear yourself think. It was unbelievable. So
it was. Yeah, it gives me chills thinking about it. That was one of the coolest environments I've ever seen back in 2021.
Yeah, and Michigan players are dancing to the music at the end of the third quarter, and that was just fantastic. I'm going to say it's a push. I think Oklahoma's going to be a tough crowd. That's going to be a tough ticket, just because it's the first time that Michigan's ever gone there. So I'm going to take the easy way out, and I'm going to say that's a push. I'll be happy, kind of, if I wouldn't say I'll be happy if they get a split, but it won't surprise me. And if you're going to tell me which one would I want to win more, obviously, it's the conference game.
100%. I'll say, yeah, it's tough, and I haven't dug into their rosters.
Right.
But I think that Oklahoma being earlier in the year maybe is slightly tougher for me, just because you don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be, breaking in a new O-line, that sort of thing. It's the reason why I said Texas last year over Oregon when everyone asked the same question, is just where it is in the schedule.
Yep.
It is going to be tough, and you add in the element that maybe you don't have your full coaching staff for that game. Depending on what happens with the NCAA, it just is what it is.
I don't see that happening.
I think either do I, but if I have to shade it one side or the other percentages, I'll say Oklahoma's tougher.
Fair.
goblue 101 says, think we will get a punter in the portal.
I do still think they're looking for a punter in the portal. Now, Beckham Sunderland is a kid who can kick, and he can punt too, according to Brandon Kornblue of Kornblue Kicking, former Michigan kicker, and he is on scholarship, I've been told. So I think that he's going to have an opportunity. Hudson Hollenbeck, everybody's like, well, you saw his average. I saw a couple really good kicks, and then I saw some really bad kicks, right? And you have to have that consistency. So I know that they want one. I know that they're going to still continue to look for one. The question is, will they be able to find one? Because everybody's looking, right? They're going to the portal, and there aren't going to be that many, according to Kornblue. So I do think that that is something that they'll continue to look for.
Yeah, I'll say they get one. It feels like that, but who knows if they'll be better. It's kind of surprising they're in this spot, I guess, because, Doman, I think you banked on 5 years, but you can't really bank on anything anymore.
Well, especially when he's not. I mean, he should have been a lot better than he is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he wasn't spending as much time on his craft, but now he's down in Florida. There were some things behind the scenes there and he's a great kid, don't get me wrong, but to me, he needed to be better, and that should have been a no-brainer, but it's just what happens. So back to the portal you go.
And think of the specialists Michigan has picked up in the spring over the last couple of years. James Turner, Dominic Zavada, even Hudson Hollenbeck was a spring find. You needed him in the Alabama game, even though he was spotty and his hang time was really low compared to the other guys.
Right.
Got some nice bounces. And then one was a touchback or whatever it was, I believe.
Yeah.
But you're picking up guys in the spring, you got no one knew Zavada was going to be that good. He did have great numbers at Arkansas State, but
oh my God,
to become he's at the top of, like, if you look at the record book, he's at the top of like every stat. He missed one kick.
Yeah, and a lot of them were 50 yarders. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous, you know. And I asked Cornblue, I said, this is better than the Moody seasons, right? And you know, Cornblue loves Moody, Jake Moody, and he said, well, yeah, kind of. He didn't have as many kicks, but the ones that he made and how critical they were. Think about this, right? If he misses his 54 yarder, you know, you got an overtime game, and if you know, Fielding makes his 26 yarder, then they lose. So that was the difference in that game, and some of the kicks were just ridiculous. This guy, and the fact that he's coming back for another year is just fantastic. So this year, though, I hear though he's going to be the I in OHIO instead of the instead of the O or whatever he was this year when they mocked them on the field after that win
Yep.
coming up November 29th.
And he tweeted the photo yesterday after Michigan basketball beat Ohio State.
He did.
I thought that was good. He's becoming like, I mean, he's kind of like not even a folk legend, or a folk hero, just a hero and a
Yeah.
legend in and of himself. And he just everything he does seems like the Michigan fan base eats it up. Um,
They
a
just
Wolverine,
what a troll job though. OHIO from your specialist down there.
they played a big game.
Everybody's being maced, and the big guys are fighting, and you're in the background making the OHIO. That's just epic. That's just
It it was.
yep.
It was. And by the way, Tommy Dolman flipped the field a couple times. So
He did. That was huge. One of them
that was
should
big.
not have been. One of them was a misplay. It was a short line drive or a line drive, and but you know what? You need everything that you can get, and those two plays, that and the kickoff. I think it was Travion Henderson, right? They started the second half at the 6 yard line,
Yes.
and they drive, but they don't get down where they need to be because they started that drive at the 6 yard line. Those are the plays, and when you talk about flipping fields and field position, those were two huge plays in that game that get overlooked.
Ohio State does what they do in the college football playoff, and all I kept seeing is like, how did Michigan beat this team? It's like I have like 15 reasons. Like they had a lot of things
Yeah.
that went right, but also at the top of that list is just Mason Graham. You can just say that, and that's
Yeah, they got
essentially
bullied.
says
They
it
got
all.
bullied by a team that was better in the trenches, especially defensively. So,
Right.
you know what? But congratulations on your cute little championship there.
A Wolverine 2 says, what is your over under for 5 stars in the 2026 class if the number is set at 3.5? I'll go under.
Yeah, me too. Still tough to get 5 stars, and frankly, I don't care because look at all these guys that Mason Graham was a 3 star. Mikey Sainristel was a 3 star. You know, it really depends on identification. Yeah, and I get that you need some 5 stars, right? But and Jim Harbaugh was elite at identifying some of these guys. There's no question about it. But later on, his coaches really did a nice job there too. I'm hoping and expecting that Michigan coaches are just as good at identifying talent. And we've seen the class that they had that was, I think, ranked like 17th or something like that. And the number of guys that in that class that actually turned out to be and play like 5 stars was like watching a John Beeline team, right? With Trey Burke was a 3 star,
True.
Tim Hardaway was a 3 star, and at the end of the day, they were all 5 star talents. So there are some guys that qualify in this coming class as well. I have never paid less attention to recruiting in terms of stars than I have in the last what 4 or 5 years. Just knowing and seeing, yeah, there are some guys that can't miss, but it's fantastic what they've Michigan has become development U, frankly, and hopefully that continues under Sharon Moore.
hmm I think it's tough to get to even 3
Yeah,
in a class, and not that you need it, right? You just
no,
laid it out. You don't need that. They've gotten 2. I was just looking at this. They've gotten 2 this past year with Andrew Babalola, Bryce Underwood. 2019 you had 2. 2017 you had 2. The Chad Henne year, I believe, with Tim Jamison, if on threes database is correct, they had 2. But that was it's hard to get 3. I
yep,
mean, it's not impossible, but we
hmm
shall see. Jim Rome Stinks says, great username, great poster over at thewolverine.com. He says, what is the most easily recognizable change we're going to see early in the Chip Lindsey era? Of course, Chip Lindsey, Michigan's new offensive coordinator. He says, please let it be a screen pass.
RPOs. I think he'll be heavy RPOs. I think there will be some screen passes too, obviously. Um, And again, you still need execution, right? Kirk Campbell gets ripped on here. There were some plays that should have worked, a lot of things that he did and scripts that should have worked that didn't because the offensive line was just that bad, and the quarterback play as well, obviously, and the receivers. But yeah, other than that, it was fantastic, right? You had the tight end, you had the running back, and then
You did, yeah,
right, and then
and a
after
kicker.
that, and a kicker, yeah. So, but you're going to see more RPOs. You're going to see, you're still going to see a lot of a heavy run offense, though. Sharon Moore is going to insist upon it, and that means that offensive line has to get better. Everything starts with that offensive line better, and I'll tell you this: the offensive isn't going to be better if that offensive line isn't better. It'll be a little bit better, but it's not going to be a ton better unless those guys step up.
I agree. I think we were asked this a couple weeks ago. I said more passing.
Hmm.
I just think that that's when you look at he's still balanced and he's still had 1,000-yard running backs, things like that. But he's developed quarterbacks well. They've thrown more than Michigan has. Of course, you do what your personnel dictates, and you do what the identity of your program is as well. And Sharon Moore, like you said, they're still going to run the football. But I'm really interested to see it too. Right? I can't really fully answer it, but I feel like Sharon Moore he's gonna like Chip Lindsey's gonna run his offense.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be collaborative with Sharon Moore, who's a great offensive mind himself. But it's going to be different, I think,
Hmm.
and it'll be interesting to see.
Yep.
But the good thing is 44 will still be out there, Max
Yeah.
B. So that's
Yeah, go
great.
like you said, a little bit of crazy, looking for somebody to hit. I still go back to that play in the Ohio State game when Alex Orji runs for 30 something yards or whatever it was,
Yep,
because the safety was so pissed off at Max Bredesen for bullying him 2 plays before that he forgot what he was doing, and instead of securing the edge, he goes to hit Max Bredesen, and Alex Orji runs right by him. That's the kind of impact that a guy like that can have on a football team. And of course, he was the lead blocker on the touchdown in that game as well. So
the
great to
one
have Max.
touchdown,
The one touchdown that was enough to win that football game, and it's great to have
and yeah, well,
Max
and
Bredesen
he
back.
was on top of Jack Sawyer, whose helmet came off, and
Yeah,
there was a runoff on the clock.
the memes on that one have been fantastic,
Yeah, they have been.
and that's where we'll end that discussion.
That's right. It does not have that's why he always wears shorts. Doesn't have gold pants. Um, let's take a few basketball questions here. Grape Ape says, "What do you think of the rotations with Roddy coming off the bench? Is the bench ostensibly just Will and Roddy? Does Sam Walters play meaningful minutes between now and the NCAA tournament? He could be an X
Hmm.
factor in the tournament. It'll be interesting to see where he kind of fits in when he's back. Back soreness. His grandfather passed away as well,
Hmm.
so prayers to the Walters
Yeah.
family. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing because looking at the numbers earlier today, the bench has played less minutes.
Hmm.
It could be because Walter's out, but
Yep.
he doesn't play that many minutes. They've played less minutes the last 3 games since Roddy started to come off the bench because he's kind of playing his normal amount,
Yeah.
and then Ruben's playing more.
Yep.
Um, so it's basically is kind of 7 guys plus the LJ Case and Justin Pippen minutes. I think you'll tighten it down a little bit because TV timeouts are shorter and the games are more important. But I'm interested to see how that plays out too.
Yeah, and it was interesting your question today. You beat me to that one about Fat Brooks because somebody
Mm,
asked it on the message board as
yep.
well. What's his role? And he said there are going to be times that we need him for 2, 3 possessions,
Hmm.
maybe at the end of a half, maybe before a one of the TV timeouts. And I was thinking Friday night would be a perfect spot for that, right? You've got that those guys have that edge, the Michigan guys in this game, where they are going all out, right? And I could see
Hmm.
Fat getting in there maybe for a couple defensive possessions or something like that and making a difference. So, not making a difference, but making an impact. So we'll see. I do think that the bench still has more to offer. Gale there certainly helps. I think this is a better team right now with Reuben Jones in the starting lineup, and I think we've seen that. I do think Sam Walters there is a role for him as a shooter. He's got to make the shots when they're there because that's why he's in the game, right? But the good news is he did some other things as well defensively and rebounding when he wasn't making a couple shots. Was it 2, 3 games ago? I forget, but where he impacted the game and Dusty May gave him credit for that. So he will have an impact down the stretch. I don't think there's any question.
I agree, and I mean, great point on Fat Brooks. Like the way Dusty went to Roddy Gale in Columbus down the
Hmm.
stretch for a couple plays didn't feel like an accident.
No, it did
Um,
not.
and he delivered right with
Yep.
2 huge buckets that we talked about at the top of the show. In-state kid, there's it's just something different about kids from Grand Rapids Catholic Central as well.
I
And
think you're a little biased, but that's okay. It says the Catholic Central graduate here. Yeah.
exactly, but in-state game against Michigan State, I could see that. And there
Yep.
actually been a couple times the last 6, 7, 8 games since we've seen Fat Brooks, whatever it's been, that I've thought that at the end of a half or something like
Yep.
that, especially Donaldson's in foul trouble.
Yep.
Like I would maybe stick him in there at the end of a half.
Yeah. And LJ Kaysen, again, the LJ Kaysen experience, 5 points and then
I
a
love
couple
it
blow-bys. And uh, he's got a bright future, man. But boy, I do. There's no fear anyway, right? And that's the thing. In a game like even like Friday night, he wasn't hesitant to pull a couple of those shots. Made a big one, and they needed both of them. Let's be honest, to win that basketball game. So
hmm
maybe his net positive was a 1, but hey, 1 is better than 0 or negative.
for sure. Grape Ape with another one. We'll just do this one real quick. Is Wisconsin the best team in the Big Ten? We beat them after unveiling our 4-5 pick and roll. It's been scouted hard since that game. How do you think Michigan matches up with Wisconsin if we see them in Indy? It's always interesting to see a
Mm-hmm.
second matchup between two
Mm-hmm.
teams. Here's the thing that people are like, if Michigan and Wisconsin played now, it's like when Michigan played Wisconsin, they were, I think, number 13 or 11 in the country, whatever it
Yeah.
was. Wisconsin was 8-0.
Yeah.
They had, dropped 101 points on Arizona, all this stuff. So it's not like they were nothing
No.
earlier in the year. They went on a 3-game losing streak that included that Michigan loss, and then they've been really good ever since. They've been really good all season. Michigan got them at a point where they were playing well, but Michigan just kind of locked down everybody not named John Tonji and John Blackwell,
Yep.
which is kind of what you need to do, and had the more physical, skilled big men, which I think is still going to be the case if they match up again.
You are what your record says you are. Wisconsin is not the best, Big Ten's best at this point. Will they be in 3 weeks? Maybe they'll be there at the top or tied for the top. But as of right now, Michigan is the best team in the Big Ten, and there are 3 weeks for somebody to knock them off that perch. Certainly could happen. Some great games. I can't wait till tomorrow night's Purdue game. I was going to go see Rich Marion's Dexter Ann Arbor Pioneer team at Dexter tomorrow night, and then I remembered Michigan State Purdue's on tomorrow night. Man, it'd be tough to pull that away from that one, but so many meaningful games yet to be played in the Big Ten tournament. And Clay and I were talking about this today. Would it suck to lose on that Friday of the Big Ten tournament with a double bye? Yes, but if it means you got the number 1 seed and you're the Big Ten champion, then whatever.
For sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, especially if you win the Big Ten regular season, even in 2013, when we had I had Spike Albrecht on a podcast 2 years ago and asked him about the Big Ten tournament, and he said we didn't care about that game at all when they lost to Wisconsin in that second round. They just wanted to get out of Big Ten play, breath of fresh air in the NCAA tournament, and they go all the way to the finals. So, but you're right. I mean, selfishly being there, it's like you want them to play as long as possible because it's way more fun that way.
Yep.
But yeah, I had Wisconsin second today in our Big Ten power rankings behind Michigan.
I think that's where they are. Yeah.
I think,
yep. But I will say Purdue, I think Purdue beats Michigan State tomorrow, and they're still going to be a factor here.
In figuring out who the best teams are and what the pecking order is hard to do given week to week. It's all these different schedules. And I will say Wisconsin has a very easy schedule, relatively speaking, the rest of the way. They still have tough games, Illinois, Michigan State, but they have Washington, Minnesota, and Penn State left.
Minnesota, though. At Minnesota could be tricky.
Sure.
So we'll see.
But it's all relative because
it is all relative.
If you're Michigan, you got to go to Michigan State. I mean, so does Wisconsin, but Michigan also has Nebraska left. They got really tough home games left. So it's tough to say. And really, with you play only 3 teams twice, and you see everyone else.
Fun to care again. Last year at this time, I was like Clay. I think was like the only media member up there on press row at the end of February.
That's right. Yeah. It has to be covered.
Yeah, somebody had to do it. You drew the short straw, and you never complained. In fact, you acted like it was the best night of your life when you were there.
It was
watching
all choice.
Yeah, exactly.
And look, this is an elite program nationally. It had to be covered. Someone had to cover it.
Yep.
And now here they are. So let's see. Let's go to Sasquatch 616. Early this season, general consensus was the Big Ten wasn't very deep or very good. Do you think all these close victories for Michigan is more indicative of Michigan not being quite good enough to make a deep run in the tournament this year, or more indicative that the Big Ten is actually better than people thought? God, everything's so case by case, although it is
Yes.
crazy their last 7 wins have been by 4 points or fewer. But I'll say
Again, which
the
is a little
Big
bit
Ten's
misleading.
pretty good.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's tough to win, like when you go on the road. And again, it's some of those shots at the end make it look closer. But yeah, I
Yep.
think every game was kind of its own animal in a way. And they threw
Yep.
away some possessions earlier in some of these games and
Yep.
blew some leads. So it just kind of everything was a little, each one was a little different.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think I look at Purdue. I think that's a really good basketball team. So fundamentally sound. I love Matt Painter. I really do. I love watching his teams play. And they haven't had a ton of tournament success under him, but they made a deep run. So, and I think Wisconsin is going to be tougher for teams. We'll see what Michigan State does if they shoot the ball well. But there are teams in the Big Ten I think that can make some noise. And I think Michigan is a matchup problem for a lot of programs outside the Big Ten. Let's put it that way. So, we talk about, hey, Michigan. Well, if they had to play so and so again, if they had to play Wake Forest again, if they had to play Oklahoma again, you know what? I'd really like Michigan in those games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oklahoma and Arkansas turned out to not
Right.
be that good. And Wake Forest is just kind of one of these
Right.
middling ACC teams in
Yep.
a weak ACC.
Yep.
So yeah, it all kind of evens out a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and they got those. You'd much rather lose those ones than the ones you've won close lately.
That's right.
Let's see. Jim Rome stinks again. Is this team going to make a deep, or if this team's going to make a deep run, an unsung hero is going to have a big game, get them over the hump in a game or two? Which player is going to have that performance?
Unsung hero. That's
Mm-hmm.
a tough one, right? I thought Roddy Gale against Purdue, for example, was an example. He's kind of unsung now, right? So, but you know, that's a hard one because again, it's about matchups and things like that. Could it be a Sam Walters hitting 3 threes in a game or something like that? As John
Right.
Beeline used to call them, the outliers, right? And Tom Izzo always bitches about the outliers when they beat his team at Michigan. Whether you were talking about Colton Christian one year made a shot, oh God, how did he make a shot? Well, he's still a D1 player, Tom, and one year, who was it, made 3 threes in a game against him, he said, well,
Xavier Simpson was one of those.
right. And he's like, we let him have those shots because he can't shoot. And gosh, he made them when they were wide open. That shouldn't happen against my team ever. So,
Right.
but
Or it's like, yeah. I mean, you
yeah,
go through it. Michigan just went. Devin Royal hit 3 threes the other day against Michigan. He
yeah,
hit 10 all year before that. It happens, right?
right.
You
It
leave a guy open
happens.
for a reason. You play the percentages.
Right, exactly. And sometimes you get burned, right? Just like in FanDuel when you think you got it won, and then a guy hits a 65-footer at the buzzer. So,
Exactly.
yeah, which is why Clay had to sell some of his art. That's why the right side of his wall is bare there. He had to sell his $2,000 painting, I think it was, right,
That's right.
to pay his debts. So just don't gamble, kids. That's the
It's all
message
worth it.
here. That's the message here.
It's all worth it as
Yeah,
long as you got a little skin in the game.
there you go.
All right, last one from EJ Holland, our coworker, covers Michigan recruiting. Go check him out. Says who wins in this 2v2 tournament? John Borton and Chris Webber. And by the way, I asked for clarification. These are the Michigan players, their form when they were at Michigan. So John Borton
Okay.
and Chris Webber, Chris Ballas and Jalen Rose. Those two, that's a match made in heaven right there.
Mm.
Clay and Jawan Howard. That's also a match made in heaven. And Anthony Broom and Trey Burke. I mean, I think you probably take your team. I'll probably take my. I'll take
nobody's stopping Chris Webber in a 2-on-2 environment. Let's be honest; he's going to dominate. So John Borton can sit there and just throw the ball high to him and get out of the way.
Can he get that pass off though?
That's a great question. Not if I'm guarding him. So I'm going with. Yeah. So yeah, you got what are you 6'1", 6'2"?
Yeah, right around there.
Yeah,
6'1.5" maybe.
Yeah. So, yeah. Regardless, Jalen, of course, is going to have all the swag and the confidence that we're going to win. So, who knows? What a dumb question, EJ. Thanks for that. So
it's a pretty good question.
Okay.
And I'm surprised EJ knew
who those guys were, being the non-Michigan fan that he is.
Right.
Yeah. Too funny.
So in that, yeah, I give him respect for that. And actually, last one, Jay Schultz says gorilla or grizzly bear, who wins?
Gorilla or grizzly bear?
Yep, in a fight.
Grizzly bear. I think a grizzly bear for sure.
I think it's grizzly bear.
Yeah, I've seen them up. Yeah, there you have it.
They're scary.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's going to be our show. We will talk to people on Thursday. We'll go a little more in depth. We'll know the outcome of the Michigan State Purdue game. Izzo will give the excuse that they didn't have enough rest. We'll talk about that and a bunch more on Thursday, probably some Michigan football as well. So keep it locked here. Keep it locked at thewolverine.com as well. Use the promo code UM1, UM in the numeral 1 for 2 months of premium access for just $1. And we'll see everyone next time.